Welcome back, Burnout teachers. Today's lesson will be about exploration or evaluation. In our current society now, everything is very much data-driven, and our society kind of runs on being able to use numbers to calculate people's worth. And I think that education is not an exception. I think that a lot of the times we become so data driven and so caught up in kind of tracking our students and really measuring their intelligence and their development based on numbers, as opposed to really creating a space for them to become creative human beings where they will be innovators themselves. And I think there's this idea that if you don't evaluate or test your students, that in some way you're being lazy or you're not really educating them, and there's no marker to know if they're growing as individuals.
They should have more time to be kids, to be youngsters, to enjoy the life.
They have no homework. What if all they want to do is climb a tree?
They could climb a tree, yeah. They can climb a tree, then they learn how to climb a tree. But they'll end up, while climbing the tree, probably finding out about different insects, and they can come to school next day telling me about what they found.
But if you really want to think about it, all these things that kids memorize for tests, they don't remember it anyway. What are the things in education that were the most meaningful experiences that people remember? They were usually the activities, or when someone came in and spoke, or there was something that they engaged in that was impactful to them, that related to their own lives, that was something that really changed them, that they would remember. When this pressure of testing is kind of taken, and tracking and evaluating and all the paperwork that comes along with it, in addition to all the other responsibilities that we already have as teachers, I think when that pressure is taken off, it really creates a much better environment for the teacher and the student, and creates a safe space for it to really be conducive to learning. Because learning is a very vulnerable process. You have to admit that you don't know things. You have to admit you have to make mistakes. It's something that is very delicate. And to just parade around people's weaknesses through these charts on these boards and stuff, and say, oh, this is in the name of them having achievement, I just think that that's a very, very wrong way of approaching things, and it really can lower the self-worth of a lot of these students, and then maybe just completely discourage them from even continuing in school.
If there was one thing I heard over and over again from the Finns, it was that America should stop teaching to a standardized test.
Get rid of those standardized tests.
National testing.
The standardized tests.
Standardized testings.
What you are teaching your students is to do well on those tests, and you're not really teaching them anything.
They figure now about 1/3 of the school time the students are in school is spent preparing for the standardized test. And so they've eliminated a lot of things that aren't on the test. So music is gone, art is gone, poetry is gone.
You take the joy out of learning because it becomes so much about this systematic way of understanding things, and it really also takes away opportunities for people to understand different ways of learning. If you can't just be given the information and regurgitate it back, then somehow you're not as intelligent. And yes, a lot of schools have started to create new methods of being able to teach via visuals, via music, the arts and stuff, and I think those are great advancements. But I think the setback is that there is still a very fundamental focus on tracking, and tracking is detrimental to the development of students. And I know that from my own experience. I also know that from working with my kids, the way that they feel when they don't perform the way that they want on a test. Yes, taking a test is a skill. It is something that you should learn, and I agree with that. But when the whole education system is surrounded around that tenet, testing, you no longer have a focus on exposure to diverse ideas. You no longer have a focus on just the child really enjoying learning.
The children need to be baking, they should be singing, they should be doing art and going on nature walks and doing all these things, because there's this very short time that they're allowed to be children.
instead of worrying so much about the test itself, I think there needs to be a focus more on exposure, and exposure being the basis for kids really entering into this process of learning.
How are they learning anything? How are you getting anything done?
Your brain has to relax every now and then. If you just constantly work, then you stop learning. And there's no use of doing that for a longer period of time.
I've seen it firsthand in early childhood that kids who are given the space to be creative and enjoy and engage in the material through art, through music, and that testing is not really in there. I think the most important thing is that you're teaching your kids all these different skills. You're exposing them to as much as you can, because later in their lives, when they're out of schooling, formal schooling, they're not going to really have the tools to be able to be lifelong learners if all they acknowledge that learning is taking a test. If that's all they see learning as, then they won't pick up a book and read for their own enjoyment. They won't watch videos and documentaries because they just want to learn about a new topic. They won't go to lectures or community events or watch like a film, or they won't try to do those things or go to an art exhibit. That won't be of interest to them because they've just completely conditioned themselves to thinking, the reason why I am studying is so I can do well on a test. That is the purpose of education. But really, for me, and the reason why I wanted to be a teacher was I really want to show my kids that the reason we go to school is to be excited about learning. The school is a grounds for us to trial out different things and explore and see what different professions and different subjects look like and be exposed to different things, so that as we grow and we get older, we kind of develop an understanding of the things that we like most and ways that we can combine them and ways that we can be creative, and then we can realize our role in the society. I think that is the ultimate goal, is to excite your students about learning so that they can be lifelong learners.
School is about finding your happiness, finding a way to learn what makes you happy.